Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain and welcome back. Today I want to talk about introspection because I talk about it an awful lot but I never really go into what I mean by it. And it's an important thing to have. It's an important thing to be introspective, to understand yourself. Because if you understand yourself, the more you're able to understand other people around you as well, to one degree or another. One of the things that always springs out to me when I'm talking about introspection specifically is that realize that you are the same as every other person on this planet, every other human being. You have the same potential, the same capacity to be awesome, the same capacity to suck balls. You have the same capacity to be all of those things or any of those things individually, and or all together. Who knows? Maybe you'll be the most awesome ball sucker. It's a thing. But then moving on from that. The example that I tend to give is if you look at language, because people always go, oh, learning language is hard. Fine, but if you look at language and realise that that was made, all of those words, the way that they put together into sentences and things like that, all of those were made by another human brain. Potentially a collection of human brains over time, but they were all still the same as you. And if they can do it, if they can work it all out, if there are other people that speak that language, then you can too. There's absolutely nothing stopping you. Because all it is a means of communication. It's a tool. All you need to do is work out how it works and you can run with it. Yes, it requires practice to a degree. Yes, it requires some looking into. But for the most part, it's just one of those things that has been developed by men, or by man as a race, as it were, for men, or for man, by man for man, by human for man. Either way, but ultimately, what it comes down to is it's just a tool. It's something that you can pick up because it's something that was generated using exactly the same hardware that you have. And so again, this is where the introspection thing. If you can appreciate your emotions, if you can appreciate your way of functioning, if you can appreciate your inclinations, your natural predispositions, and then you know that gives you a point to start understanding someone else's point of view and the differences between the two. And it doesn't I'm not necessarily saying that you can completely get into that person's head and understand them entirely, but if you know that when you're upset you react by clamming up and closing down and going and hiding somewhere and sobbing to yourself, then when someone else does the same thing, it's easier for you to notice, it's easier for you to understand, empathize with, and maybe even help that other person just by being there for them in a way that you would want someone to be there for you. Yes, you might find someone on the other end of the spectrum though who flares up a lot when they get upset and they lash out a bit more. But the thing is, you can still appreciate the emotions behind it, and you can still offer the kind of support that maybe you would want, and maybe that would still help for that other person. Individual differences are a very big thing in this, but ultimately what it comes down to though is if everyone has an understanding of themselves and can therefore interpret other people through the same level of appreciation that they have, then that allows for a much greater understanding. I mean, I can't help but feel that if people were more introspective, that we wouldn't have all of these issues in regards to race, in regards to gender, because introspection breeds thoughtfulness. You sit down and you analyze yourself, you break yourself down into little pieces and you examine them, and as a result then you can show those pieces to other people and you can demonstrate, this is me in bite-sized chunks, and this is how I function, this is how I work. And as a result, it's an exchange. It becomes a case of if you're introspective and I'm introspective and we both have a good understanding of ourselves, then we can show each other in little pieces so that it's easier for the other person to understand. And as a result, the conversation starts and the discussion starts. And it's like when I've been when I went and did my accreditation for DISC as a profiler, it's a case of coming in and having that conversation with a lot of people there, and going, I am this, I am that, in broad strokes, yeah, it allowed for a greater appreciation and understanding amongst the people there, and as a result, there was no negativity, there was no judging or anything like that. It was very much just a very open and happy space to interact in, because everyone had this appreciation of, I am this thing broken down into these parts, and as a result, this is what this is how I relate to the world. How do you relate to the world? It was a very interesting and an open area to discuss these things in, and yet you don't see that kind of thing in many other places. You do not see that either appreciation of how you tick all of your motivators and the things going on in your head and so on and so forth. You don't have that appreciation encouraged an awful lot, and you definitely don't have the moments and the places on a regular basis where people will discuss things, especially not those things, because some of them are, it's opening yourself up to a person, even in a very minor way, in a very broad strokes kind of approach. But even with people on the internet who claim to be on the same side of the political spectrum, on the same side of an argument, you still see fracturing, you still see those arguments popping up, even though apparently they are on the same side as part of the same subset and have some level of motivation that is the same. They still then turn on each other, they still then attack each other, and that level of, that lack of understanding, I feel, comes from them not necessarily understanding themselves as much as they could do. They put themselves out into these spaces where it's, I am this individual and I've got these goals, but they don't necessarily understand the motivations behind the goals or the behaviours that have prompted them to develop those goals over the long term. And it breaks things down, and maybe part of it is that you've got groups of people who clash purely based on this, they both want the same thing, but they're approaching it in different ways, and because they don't have the level of introspection to allow them to take note of how each of them is approaching things, and they don't have that level of understanding between them to exchange the ideas on how they should approach something, they end up butting heads. I've seen this numerous times on management teams, where you've got one person who is very much more a C, very much more conforming and compliant personality type, who wants to go through the process, who wants all of the T's crossed and the I's dotted, and they need to have all the specifics written down, and they need to have all of those things kind of very, very much highlighted and apparent to them. And then, they want the result to occur, but the result occurring is going to be as a result of all of these processes that they'll put in place. And then on the opposite end of things, you'll have a I-type or a D-type personality, a D-type going, I don't care about all of these rules, regulations, processes, I want the result, and they will just charge at it, and as a result they will frustrate the C-type personality. Or it'll be an I-type personality, where what they really care about is crowdsourcing the ideas from all of the people around them, but the thing is, then that means that they may very well forget the process, because they've taken more information from somewhere else. They've taken ideas from another place and they've actioned them on a whim, instead of going back to a plan and double checking how it should work and things like that. And as a result, you've got the more active personality types, the dominant and the influencing, frustrating the more passive types, or you've got the task focused frustrating the people focused, or vice versa in both instances. That level of understanding and that appreciation of other people and how they work and how you work is so good at just removing issues, solving problems, dealing with arguments and so on and so forth. But obviously everyone involved needs to be at least somewhat willing to have those conversations and to examine themselves, because one of the things that I said early on in some of my videos is that when I go in and talk to a client, I am purely a reflection of what they tell me. I'm a reflection of all the things that they present to me. And as a result, You know, this is not the prettiest reflection that you are likely to ever see. And sometimes the reflections that you will have of yourself, the things that you see inside yourself, will not be nice. They will not, you know, if you examine yourself too much, they will not be pretty things. They will not be things that you agree with or that you enjoy all of the time, but they may very well still be part of you. The best way to deal with those things is to own them, because if you own them, then you control them. They don't control you. If you just let them sit there and allow them to be ignored, then they can sit in the background pulling your strings and pressing your buttons to get you to do all manner of things. You know, that awareness, that knowing, allows you that element of control. It allows you that element of choice in your action. But yeah, let you guys please tell me what you guys think in regards to this. Do you guys actively spend time analyzing yourselves? Are you particularly introspective? Do you actively avoid it, like certain individuals, Donald Trump to name one? You know, do you try and remove yourself from introspection because you're afraid of what you'll see, or because it makes you feel bad? You know, I'm no stranger to feeling crappy because I've looked at myself and gone, I'm nearly 30 and I've had ups and downs, but I feel like I've had more downs than ups. You know, is you know, does it actively in that case start having you take back steps from just examining yourself? You know, I can say right now in regards to that, when I've had those moments and I've looked at myself and gone, I've had maybe a third of my life so far, and or coming up on a third of my life so far, and I've got some stuff to show for it, but I've got this vast gaping empty void where I feel like stuff should be that it isn't, you know, and that's demotivating. Is that something that that I really need to worry about? No, because I've already answered my own question. I've only had a third of my life. That huge empty space that's there is still for everything else that I've still got to do, in which case I can't, you know, I need to have a good look at myself and see what things that I learned from when I had those downturns, when I had those bad times, and I need to pick those things up and go, okay, well, I know how these work now. I know how to make them work better. I can rebuild them, I can put them back together, and I can do better next time. You know, that huge empty gaping space, as much as it sucks, as much as I would love to have so much more there to show for what I've done in my life so far, you know, those things will come. That space will be filled, and by the time that I get to a point where I either have to slow down, or I have to stop doing what I'm doing, or I need to move on to something else, or worst comes to worst, my health deteriorates and I'm not going to be around for much longer. When it gets to that point, I'd like to think that I can then look back at the things that I do have to show for it and be happy for it. You know, and if you're worried that that's not the case, then the only person that can change that is you. You're the one that has to do the work to achieve those things, to fill up that space in your life with awesome. And that's all I've got to say on it. So if you're one of these people that may very well share your experience down below, and I hope you do, then if you're one of those individuals who's a bit more afraid and who has a lot of daunting prospects and things like that, kind of sat in the shadows behind you whispering to you, don't worry about it. Grab them and pull them into the light. Let have a good look at them, understand what they are and where they come from, because then you can use them as stepping stones to get to wherever it is that you want to go. But yeah, anyway, as said, drop your experiences down into the comments down below. I will read all of them. I will find them all fascinating, and maybe they will prompt other videos in the future. If you like this, please drop me a like, and otherwise subscribe for more videos, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye.